Near enough. It's near enough to 4 o'clock. Welcome everyone, and particularly welcome Alan Tiller and also Susie Reichstein. Both of you, welcome. We have a training session for this meeting, or prior to this meeting, and so I'm going to recommend that we suspend our meeting to facilitate just a brief training session with the Council's Team Leader of Governance, Susie Reichstein.
We'll do that after we've got through the confirmation of minutes. So
we'll okay.
All of the roll calls.
Okay, so we're not going to suspend the meeting then?
After confirmation of minutes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, we didn't explain that before.
No, you didn't. No, okay, that's all right. Okay, so we're going to go through the agenda until the minutes confirmation. Yeah. We would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Gawler people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Gawler people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Gawler people today. Now, I think everyone's here except Adrian Brown, aren't they? And we haven't received any apologies as such. Are there any motions to grant leave of absence? No, no leave of absence. We've mentioned non-attendance. Any declarations of interest? No. Would someone like to move confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting, please? Helen? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Karen. Any discussion? All those in favour, please show. Carried. Thank you. So now, boom, boom. I recommend meeting procedures be suspended to facilitate a brief training session with Susie Reichstein from Council's Governance section on meeting procedure and conflict of interest. But I need the approval of 2/3 of the members to do so. So can I ask, through a show of hands, if members are happy to suspend the meeting? Yes, we've got that. Good. Okay, so we will hand over to you, Susie. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you very much. And can I say, well done getting through that. Okay, sorry. Okay. I will run through this fairly promptly, given everyone except for the newest member to the committee has, and especially the council members and Mayor Redmond have done this ad nauseum. So, Mr Tiller, if you have any questions, because I will run through it quite quickly, we can you can facilitate through Jacinta or Natasha, and we can touch base at a later date, because the other two independent members also received the same training about a year ago. So very, very quickly, I will just outline basically what I call my Bible, the Local Government Act and the regs. I will provide a lot of the framework for the way council operates and the council committees. So we've got the Act and the meeting procedure regulations. Then we also have the two main documents on the website, the Code of Practice and the access to meeting documents. Don't think that one potentially, do you ever have to go into confidence for this committee? Rarely. So the access to meeting documents talks about when a committee can consider matters in confidence and retain meeting documents, agendas, minutes in confidence. So that provides the framework. There are four main principles that guide decision making. Talks about having meeting procedures that are fair and equitable, they're transparent, allow for informed decision making, encourage appropriate community participation. Well, this committee, by its actual composition, provides that, with independent members playing a key role, gives certainty to the community and the decision makers' confidence in deliberations to arrive at decisions, and make sure that they reflect the level of formality as required. Being a formal Section 41 committee, it does mean that we are subject to the formal proceedings that are covered under the Act and the regulations. We have 4 Section 41 committees. This committee, we've got Infrastructure, Environmental Services, I'm going to get it wrong, Corporate and Community, which is why I keep getting that mixed up with your official title, David. And we've got the Youth Advisory Committee. There's a terms of reference, which you have probably been furnished with a copy, or if you haven't, I've got a link that I can get to you. That's the other document that really covers off per committee. Each committee has one of these on the more finer details, I guess, in relation, the types of issues the committee may deal with, the functions, whether the membership composition, frequency of meeting, those sorts of details are in the terms of reference that council adopts. So I've just quickly running through committee responsibilities, covering off on the functions as outlined in the terms of reference. That should have been bi-monthly. I did change it elsewhere. Sorry, I didn't change it there in my rush today. And this committee reports into council through decision recommendations to council for decision reports. So if you're merely noting a document that's come to your committee, you don't need to recommend to council that your committee's noted it. It's just for those decisions when you're looking at photographs, permission to publish photographs, those sorts of things, where a decision is made, the committee wants council to make a decision, that will be recommended through. Members comply with what we call the behavioural standards. There's attendance requirements. So if you miss more than 3 meetings in a row, there is a requirement for a leave of absence to be applied for, and there is some leeway, I think, for like if there was sickness or something and you needed to do it retrospectively, if you weren't aware, then there's some ability to do that as well. Conflict of interest, very quickly, I will cover off on. And the presiding member responsibilities, as they've been duly shown already with the opening of the meeting, go through the order of business, provide an opportunity for everyone to contribute in a matter that's up for debate, and we also have the signing of the minutes. Once they're confirmed, our lovely presiding member will then initial and sign the minutes that they're a true and accurate record as voted by the committee. A quorum, so if you are unwell, let the presiding member, David, one of the staff copied in as well, that you'll be an apology. If there's so many apologies that there's not going to be a quorum, and that's known well in advance, can work to, making sure the meeting's adjourned to a different time and date because there's been notification of a lack of quorum, which is half plus 1. There's no fraction of your membership. How many members? Yep. Yep. Minutes have to note certain things, as Sarah is well versed in with all of her experience. Must detail a mover and a seconder for each. We need a motion to have a mover and a seconder before the outcome, whether it's carried or lost, can be determined. We need to note down attendees' apologies, leaves of absence, any of those sorts of things. There's a whole raft that are listed in the regulations as to what the meeting minutes must contain, but I sort of covered off on the main sort of areas there. Motions, mover and seconder required. If you don't have a seconder, it lapses, so that the proposed motion in that form, people can try and put something forward with different wording or potentially to see if that gets a seconder. At least having a seconder allows for a matter to be debated. If there's no seconder, nothing happens. Can be varied or amended. If someone moves an amendment, it can't be moved or seconded by the original mover and seconder. There's a maximum of 2 amendments per motion. So if one's put up and it's lost, someone goes, oh, I'm going to propose another amendment, slightly different, and that's 2 lost, then it goes back to the original matter for consideration, the original motion. You can vary or withdraw a motion with the mover with the seconder's consent and approval if approval is granted, like we did with the suspension of meeting procedures to facilitate my mini presentation. And then if carried, the motion then becomes a resolution. So the terminology changes, and that resolution will state, you know, that the committee recommends to council if it's a decision report, whatever the matter might be, or if it's an information report and you're just noting something, that will be a resolution of your committee. That won't be recommendation to council. All members must vote when something's been moved or seconded. I think there have been some members, a member I can think of at a previous council who, for certain matters, always seemed to be in the bathroom when the vote occurred. I don't recommend that as good governance practice. So all members must vote. That should be presiding member. Has a deliberative vote if there's a tie. Has a deliberative vote, which is the same as all the other council members and members of the committee, which is different compared to the full council, where Mayor Redman is in the unenviable position, if there is a tie, of having the casting vote, which I don't envy you with that. You can ask a question at any time. I know with some of the more topical or controversial matters, and I don't think you really get that sort of business at this committee with the matters you deal with. It is encouraged with our council meetings, though. Whoa!
Oh, that's a dangerous
Is it? I was going, oh, sorry. More controversial matters where there might be a lot of questions, you know, it is encouraged, if you've had a read of your agenda beforehand, to touch base with the relevant staff to get those answers outside of the meeting. Yep. Conflict of interest. So there's 2 conflicts. One is a general conflict where your personal interests could be seen to be conflicting with your duties as a member of the committee. The other type of conflict is a material conflict where there may be a benefit or gain lost to you. Doesn't have to be a financial benefit, could be something else, based on the outcome of the decision. So I know there's been an example, I think, and I have referenced it further down. I'll just quickly run through a couple of examples, and then, unless anyone's got any specific questions, I'll leave you to the rest of the business of your meeting after that. If an impartial, fair-minded person might consider a member's private interests could result in them participating in the debate and subsequently, I guess, voting in such a way might be contrary to their public duty. We support members of committees and council, when council members meet, need to have an impartial, not have a predetermined view, and be impartial regarding the matter, listen to the debate and then make their decision. So if you were, for example, a member of a local community group, whether that be a sporting club, for example, you're not the president, you're not an official office holder, so you don't hold an office, but you just play in a team. Maybe softball is a good example, and there's a matter about the Carbethan Reserve where the softball team play comes before the committee or the council. You might not have, because you're not an office holder, you don't have a material benefit, but you might still declare under a general conflict of interest that, look, I play softball there, I'm not going to get any sort of financial benefit or anything from this particular decision about, I'm trying to think, there's no benefit to my team if there's an extra light pole or not an extra light pole. you would still maybe want to put that on the record that you play softball for a particular club. Councillor Koch, you've, with your writing standards and whatnot, often have where you may have had some experience putting some content into one of the standards, I think was a recent example, but so you know, that's not the one, that's a material one. There was one that wasn't. I'm trying to think, you've involved with helping assist draft a greening document recently. And I think Councillor Hughes was involved in that too, for landscape. Yeah. I think you both had a general conflict because you both participated in the state greening plan. There was something like that. I can't remember, but there was no financial or individual benefit. But both councillors, you both declared a general conflict for that item. So it was at least written down that you'd provided some input into that document. But they were still able to participate in the meeting and they advised the meeting whether they were going to vote or not in the matter as well. Keep going. Must inform the meeting if you have a conflict, what your interest is, and if you're going to participate and vote and why, and that those details are recorded in the minutes. So the why is often I guess the part of that requirement where you need to state that you don't have a predetermined view. You know, you might say that your involvement playing softball gives you some insight that might be able to assist with a decision, or sharing the information. A material conflict of interest is where there would be a benefit or a loss depending on the outcome of that matter. There's a whole raft of specified persons. I won't go into War and Peace with that. I think I can follow up if you'd like a copy of I can give you this hard copy actually if you'd like, and then if you have any questions further you can touch base later. So directly and indirectly, personal or pecuniary, monetary benefit, property value increase was something when I was a member of a council. There was some zoning changing next to a property I owned, which would positively impact the value of my property, so I declared a material interest and left the meeting for that particular item. So those sorts of things can come to your mind. Member of a sporting club committee, so with the softball example, I said if you are not a member of the executive committee, if you are a member, you do have a material conflict if a matter regarding that comes up for debate. If a decision, for example, might benefit a relative, might be a contractor that might put in for a tender. And I've done this one because I think this is one that has come up before I've seen in the minutes where there has been an item that's been submitted for the collection and a member was okay, I'm correct. My recollection isn't too bad. And that would definitely be a material interest. See, I do read all of the minutes. So again, like a general conflict, if you've got a material conflict, you must inform the meeting and then you leave. So leave so you can't hear the discussion or the vote, or I guess like with a steely gaze, try and influence anyone. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, and then that detail is again recorded in the minutes. Yes. Yep.
And you'd leave the room. Is it still that you can't even look at the recording of that section of or has that changed?
There's nothing to stop if it's a public part of the meeting of you going back and looking at the recording. The idea of you leaving the meeting is so that you can, and you don't hear or see, and you can't observe members is a part of that, I guess, undue influence that may bring. So that's why often, David, I know you've pulled the blinds down so that a member couldn't influence by, like, as I said, a steely gaze or anything like that. The idea is that you leave the room so you can't see or hear or be seen yourself. Yeah. So you can still go. There's nothing that would prevent you when the decision's done. In fact, you can come back into the room and the presiding member can still advise what the outcome was. As I said, that's for matters that are considered in the open part of a meeting. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Yep. And the other one, so these are, you won't have a conflict of interest if the interest is held in common with a substantial proportion of ratepayers, electors or residents. Setting rates is a very common example of that. Another example, I live in the Barossa. We had a separate rate to fund the construction of the rec centre back when I was on council. So when that separate levy was determined, even though it wasn't like rates where there were lots and lots of ratepayers, there was still, because I was also a member of the existing rec centre, so there was no conflict because there was enough, I held that interest in common with enough proportion. Even though I was a member, there was less members than ratepayers, but it was still considered that I didn't have a conflict with that one at the time. If you don't know, you can't be taken to have a conflict like if your employer or even further down the line, any of the specified sort of relatives. If you don't know something, you can't be held accountable for it. You won't have a conflict of interest if you are, and any of these apply. So engaging with a community group, sporting club or similar, you know, street corner meetings or the like, that happens during certain periods. You can't be regarded as having a general conflict of interest just because you're a member of a particular political party. If you're a member of a group, so that's not an office holder role, but just a member of a group, you can't be considered as having a conflict. If you've been a student of a particular school or your children go to a particular school, and there might be something to do with that school on the agenda. And if you've been nominated for appointment, I'm missing an F there, for appointment as a member of a board, if you're nominated for appointment by the council. So this is where the council doesn't make a decision, and I'll use it, Councillor Hennessy, if I may, with your nomination to the Libraries Board. So Councillor Hennessy was nominated by the council for consideration by the LGA that made that decision. So there's no conflict with that one because it's not council making the appointment decision. We're just saying we put Councillor Hennessy forward for appointment, and so in that case there's no conflict. And that's a very, very quick rundown, and I'll give you my hard copy and you can have the terms of reference document for the future as well.
Thank you, Susie, on behalf of the committee very much for what is, again, a very lucid and clear run-through of the regulations. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? If not, you've got an early minute. Thank you very much. So we'll proceed with the rest of the meeting. The business rising from the minutes, I'm assuming, will be for the rest of the agenda, so we'll proceed to decision reports, item 6.1. Permission to publish the Clement family photographs. Would you like to talk us through this, Jacinta, please?
Through the Chair, Miss Rachel Winters came down from Sydney to access the Heritage Collection. She'd been in contact with me prior to see what we had. Her family are direct descendants of Edward Clements, who was a mayor, and they were looking to fill out the family picture, so they came and spent a day in Gawler, and we went through the collection. There are 4 photographs in the collection that they would like copies of. It's just for family use. There's no family history being intended or anything at this stage. Of particular interest is 2 photographs that simply say Mrs. Clements, and they're not labelled which Mrs. Clements. They're quite keen to compare those to photographs. They don't have any known photographs of their great-grandmother, but to try and sort of compare them with family photographs and see if they can see any similarities. And that would be advantageous for us because we would then gain some more information about an item in the collection. So council staff do support this application.
Thank you, Jacinta. Before we commence discussion, can I have someone who's prepared to move that? Karen, and second it? Deb, is there any discussion? If not, those in favour, please show. Thank you. So that was unanimous. Item 7. Would you like to talk us through that, please, Jacinta?
So through the chair, if I might ask Deb to speak about the program because she's been involved in organising all of that, and then I can speak about any other matters that the committee might have from that point.
Thank you. Deb, thank you.
Thank you. So what Helen and Jacinta and I have got together and had discussions about how it would look. We're looking at a half day, a Friday, probably the 17th or 24th of October, 25. The structure of the symposium would have 3 parts. The first one would be a focus on the Borough Charter. The second one would be a focus on heritage economics. And then the third one would be looking at case studies, with particular case studies around Gawler, obviously. All of this needs to be concluded, but this is, yeah. Is there anything else you want? Any other questions on that? Or
Are there any questions of Deb? Paul?
Just reading it, have you finalised or have you booked in the speakers yet?
thanks, Paul. We can't do that until we get confirmation from the committee and the council that we can do this symposium. So unfortunately, it's still in principle. They have said that they will.
Oh, they have said that.
They have said that they will participate, but in principle. But of course, we need to firm it up and have dates and so on. Yeah.
Helen?
Thank you. Not a question as such, but an additional comment. This topic is actually becoming quite popular across a number of organisations. I noticed that the Heritage Council of South Australia has had a similar, not the same, but so there's growing interest, obviously, in the community about the economic value that can come, especially from the repurposing and the reuse of buildings. But it also applies to the economic leverage that can come from having a collection like as ours as well to support that reuse. So, I think it's obviously I think it's a worthwhile venture and hope that the committee supports it.
What time will it start?
So through the chair, we were looking at approximately a 1 p.m. start, so after lunch, with sort of a break for afternoon tea and drinks afterwards, but not to provide a lunch.
Deb?
We did think that we could charge a minimal fee to help cover the cost of post-drinks, and we don't imagine that there will be any heavy, night of anything, but and we will be looking at sponsors possibly as well. Yes, and I'd just like to add that in response to Helen, your comment that on recent readings that I was doing, I found out that Kenneth Gawler was actually first writing about heritage economics back in the 60s with the Kennedys, because Jackie was very interested in all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Helen, yes.
Deb, who is it that we expect to attract? Who do you think might attend? What type of person?
I think we'd like to attract the younger people in Gawler, people who have moved here and people who need to understand the heritage of Gawler. So there wouldn't be a large group there, but to try and grab the imagination of some of these people. Regional, going further out regionally, as even out to Borough, into the city, people who have an interest in the topic, and just it's not just a Gawler event. Yeah.
Any further discussion that anyone would like to pursue? No? No further questions? Well, we have a recommendation here to go to council, I'm assuming. So would someone like to move that for us? Thank you, Karen. And someone second it, please. Paul. Those in favour, please show. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Move to 7.2, noting the heritage collection. Is there any discussion? No? Could someone move that goes ahead? Thanks, Helen and Karen. Any further discussion? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Again, an excellent report, and coupled with the first report about the request for publication and the fact that we stand to benefit from it. I think again, it's more good news. It's displaying what we always thought would happen, that this is becoming an increasingly useful resource, not only for our community, but for people connected to Gawler, and that the fact that the statistics kept are now starting to really show the extent at which people are using it, and you know, the interstate and overseas connections are really starting to show that, in fact, we are bringing people to Gawler, either initially or, you know, sometimes by a request followed up by a site visit. So well done to all involved.
Thank you, Helen. I just have a question. The volunteers, you're still getting plenty of volunteers?
So through the chair, we have 11 current volunteers at the moment, which is pretty much at capacity for in the space. If you're in there on a Wednesday or a Thursday, you'll notice that when we have visitors, it's quite vibrant, sometimes a little noisy. So there are opportunities for people who would like to help us by research at home, and potentially we could fit another volunteer in on a Monday, but we're really, you know, thankfully at capacity and with a very well-trained and committed group of volunteers who work with us.
That's fantastic. Have you advertised for people doing research at home?
Through the chair, we did a while ago. We haven't. We'll in the new year we will do that again once people get over the Christmas period and start to think about how their year might be looking. Is generally a good time to tap into what someone might be looking at, new interests and new activities to be involved in. So we will work with our volunteer coordinator, Sana, to do a little bit of a campaign at that time.
Thank you, Jacinta. Item 8. Updated motion list on page 17. Didn't we?
We need to vote.
Oh, we didn't do that, sorry. Okay, those who would like to vote, please. For?
That's been moved and seconded.
Just needs to be voted. Sorry, I missed out on it. Okay, against everyone. Thank you. All right, so updated motion list. 8.1. Any discussion? No. Update on the Steinway. Thank you, Jacinta.
Thank you, Chair. As the committee will remember, at a recent meeting, a decision was made to take the Steinway out of storage and place it upright so that experts in that field could have a good look at it and give us some professional advice. So we have moved last week. We moved the Steinway into the Gawler Administration Building. It's in the ground floor atrium area. Lever and Sons, who did the work on the Bechstein piano, did the move, and they did an assessment and they will be providing a report. I have been in contact with Steinway in Victoria about the possibility of them providing some a report and some information on the piano and costings should we want to have it restored or sold. Their general view was 100-year-old pianos cost as much to restore as a brand new piano, so why would you? That's their general feeling, but they were happy to think about it a little bit. And fortunately, with modern technology, we can do a Teams meeting in the site and go through the piano, so it's not necessary for somebody to come to Gawler to look at the piano on their behalf. They've been very helpful. So it's my intention to bring all of the information to the committee at the December meeting. So we'll have an understanding of what Lever and Sons propose as a value for the piano should we sell it, or the cost of restoring it. Equally from Steinway, I haven't been able to find anyone else who would be who restores pianos of that size. I have made contact with a few people that sell them, and I will see if they will give us any additional information. I'll also get a costing of the cost if council decided that they did want to restore it, which would be a huge expense. There would also be a significant expense to crane it into this building, and that needs to be part of the decision making. So there would need to be a road closure of Murray Street, and it would need to be craned through the balcony. So that all needs to be part of the decision making. So it's my intention to bring as much information as possible to the committee, and then they can make and have an informed discussion on the matter.
Thank you very much, Jacinta. Any questions or discussion? Helen, and then Karen.
Yeah, I think all that information together, perhaps with a touch base. I think we had, can't think of his name at the moment. We had a gentleman. Thank you, Steve Gawler. That's my brain. He had an opinion as well, and I know the Barnett family still may have some discussion. But perhaps we could also add in the restoration and use of the Bechstein since it was first brought into the reading room, because that is our other piano, and means that there is a piano, one of the pianos here, in working order in the Civic Centre. So maybe that might be useful to bring into the discussion as well.
Karen.
I'd just like to thank Jacinta for a very comprehensive report, and I look forward to the December meeting.
Yes, I second that. Wonderful report. Thank you very much. And very detailed, but it's sad, I think. Yeah.
If I may, through the chair, this item, this object, will always have its, regardless of what decision is made, it will always have its historical story and narrative and the documents that were provided to the committee to, so that future generations understand the role that the piano played. But equally, if we're not going to restore that piano and use it, then as a custodian of historic objects, I feel that it needs to go to somebody who will, so that its story can continue. That's a personal opinion, but it is a historical object and it has a story and it has a life, and that should be part of its continuation.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Jacinta. So nobody else in discussion? No questions? Thank you. Thank you, Jacinta. All right, item 9, any items listed for discussion at future meetings apart from the seminar, whatever, I know there are, symposium, that's the word I'm looking for. Are there any others that we need to add to that list? No. Okay. The management plan, which is ongoing. Any questions without notice? Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm aware that, Jacinta, you've done some work with the George Rao collection. Perhaps you could let us know how that's going?
So through the chair, as many committee members will be aware, Mr Rao died recently, and as a lifelong Gawler resident and a very strong aficionado and collector of train items, anything associated with trains and the Gawler foundries, there was some question about what happened to that collection. Tony Piccolo spoke to the family and managed to find out that that collection was donated whole to the National Railway Museum. He contacted the Railway Museum on the behalf of the Gawler community and asked to, was there an opportunity for items to be shared? The Railway Museum has very generously given us items that they did not want, and they will provide us with digital scans of items that they do want, and so that we can add them to the collection. So I went to the National Railway Museum on Tuesday and picked up all of the items, so I now know I can tell the difference between an S and a T and an L locomotive. So there are some lovely photographs in there. There are some photographs that I have not seen before, which may be unique. and it's a really good understanding of the types of locomotives that were manufactured by the foundry here, and the role that they played. So it's rounding out that story. So I look forward to receiving the digital copies, especially of the foundry plans, the architectural drawings for the foundry, which will be fantastic. So we're very grateful to Tony Piccolo and his office for following through on this and ensuring that there was ready access in Gawler to people who would like to see these objects, and it's not necessary to go to the National Railway Museum. So we're appreciative of that.
Thank you, Jacinta. Helen?
And interestingly, there's at least one expert who's very similar to George's knowledge has indicated that he may well be able to help with doing some of the research on it. So little things do come forward, and all of a sudden we've got people in the community who actually, will be prepared to help identify and research those items. So that's great.
Thank you, Helen. The committee, not all the committee may know that there is a committee which Tony has convened, people who are interested in positioning, if you like, the old canopy that was over the railway line. And that's still in a state of flux. We're still discussing options with, obviously, personnel from railways and so on, and architects. But an interpretive centre at the station is sort of, I think, one of the things that the group would like to see. And it means that a lot of George Rowe's memorabilia, or copies of it at least, would be part of that. All right. Are there any motions without notice? No? If not, thank you everybody for your input tonight, and once again welcome Alan, and see you hopefully all on the 12th of December.